This is Late Republic Nonsense, this time with Sean Davis.
Hey man, how's it going?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I'm sitting here. I'm looking out the window. The ocean is moving in a kind of beautiful way, and it's sunny. And it's fantastic to be alive. And so we were talking a few days ago, or we were messaging a few days ago, kind of about you coming on here and us talking. And you told me something I had no idea about, which was that you played guitar and that you were, that you're quite good, but you were a shredder in a past life. Tell me about that.
Yes. I refer to myself now as a recovering shredder. So I've been involved in music my whole life. Had the piano lessons as a kid. I played saxophone for years. And then
Which horn?
Alto.
Alto, okay. Yeah. I can see you with an alto.
I was never particularly good at it. But when I was, right around when I was 15 or 16, so halfway through my freshman year of high school, my mom and dad suggested, hey, you should try guitar. You've got super long fingers, you're musical, we think you'd like it. And my dad had played guitar and enjoyed it. So the music director at my church had a spare guitar at the church, and she said, why don't you just use this for a couple months? You can see if you like it, if you enjoy it.
Sure.
And if you do, then you can go buy your own guitar, but this will save you a couple $100 that you probably don't have. So I borrowed that guitar, and my dad kind of started showing me chords and this and that, and it clicked like nothing in my life has ever clicked. Everything about it instantly made sense. Within 6 months, I had surpassed my dad. I had kind of plateaued as far as self-teaching. Like at that point, I didn't even know what I didn't know. So I signed up and got lessons and immediately got into music theory. Absolutely loved it. And from there, kind of moved into blues and jazz. And by the time I was 16 or 17, I was playing in bars with a blues band with a couple of friends. I helped pay my way through college by teaching lessons at a big studio in West Texas. And I absolutely love guitar. There was a time at which I was considering making a career of it, being a professional musician. And a friend at the time said, what's the difference between a guitar player and a pepperoni pizza? And it said a pepperoni pizza can feed a family. Just kind of joking.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought,
it's kind of joking, but it's not joking. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, but it's also kind of true. You to be able to endure that kind of lifestyle, which is absolutely brutal. You're going gig to gig. You're making no money. You're living out of a van. Mm-hmm. You have to be so dedicated. You have to want that so bad in order to go through it. And I never wanted it that bad. Guitar is just something I've always loved and enjoyed doing. And I kind of made the decision it was going to be a hobby rather than a profession for me.
Than a vocation. Yeah. I mean, when I was living in New York and playing music, I had a friend who was, I guess probably he was in his 70s at that point, he and his wife, and we would talk. They were kind of like the grandparents of the jazz scene at that time, Stephanie and Irving Stone. And he used to tell me all the time, he was like, if you could do anything else in the world, then do it. Only do music if you like literally either have no aptitude for anything else or your soul will be crushed if you do anything else. And I think I often think of that, and it's kind of true because it's a hard road, as you said, like the pepperoni pizza can, feed your family more likely than that, especially if you're working in a kind of fringe, let's say, a fringe idiom like jazz or improvised music or something, even in New York City. It's just very hard. And to be in that for 20, 30, 40 years is a lot. You really have to have that attitude where there's like nothing else you can do. Nothing else that makes you happy.
And I learned pretty early on that there were things I was really good at and there were things that I wasn't great at. So I never had the awesome stage presence, the charisma that you kind of associate with these icons.
Right.
I didn't have it. I joked that I had the stage presence of a dead fish. All I wanted to do was play guitar.
It's play. Right.
And I was never a good writer. I just don't have the brain for good songwriting. I'm a very linear A to B kind of thinker. And personally, I don't think that works for storytelling, or for just kind of nice, fun flowing music. I was, in theory, in a way, almost ruined me because I got so obsessed with what the theory was and what it should be that I lost the ability to just find a melody, which is, if you can't write lyrics and you can't find a melody, you can't be a songwriter. It's just not going to work. But the thing I was great at was actually,
no, I'm sorry.
The thing I was great at was playing guitar. So if I was going to have a future in music, it was going to be as a studio musician, a session player, and that it never appealed to me.
Yeah. No. I mean, I get it. And the shredding thing sort of like, pops into that because I remember when I was younger, and that's what everybody was doing. That's what everyone wanted to do. They wanted to be Steve Vai or Yngwie Malmsteen. And it's, I don't know. I mean, I guess we've come around to the point where we're kind of giving it a reappraisal. That the blazing fast speed, basically, playing like a Bach prelude on guitar with the distortion cranked up, which is like, what is it? It's like virtuoso, it's like virtuoso music, right? And and it's like sort of the thing where, like, if you're a young guy, that thing kind of instantly grabs you in a way that, for one reason or another, it usually doesn't grab women. But now, interestingly enough, you go on YouTube and you see these, you see like a 14-year-old girl and she's like shredding, Yngwie, stuff. It's incredible how that changed. But back in the day when we were growing up, there was none of that. I mean, did you know any women who were playing music?
Not rock music, certainly not blues, the kind of stuff that I was into. And at the time, so we're talking mid 90s, I couldn't get enough of like the 70s and 80s blues rockers. Like, I often joke that I was born 15 to 20 years too late because by the time that I really got into that stuff, it was already passé. I mean, Stevie Ray Vaughan had already died. Eric Clapton had gotten into his like babyface phase. He kind of moved away from the blues stuff. There was Kenny Wayne Shepherd, but he was just kind of doing what Stevie Ray did. I would say the one person, at least when I was kind of having my formative musical guitar experience, who was doing what I wanted to do was Johnny Lang. So if you remember the song Lie to Me, which is the only one of his anyone ever knows, that song to this day, I think absolutely rocks. It's awesome. It's got everything you want. It's got kind of the plaintive vocals on it. It's got the great guitar groove. It rocks. It's filmed in a guitar store, which I just thought was the coolest thing ever at the time.
Sure. Okay, you know what? I don't even know. For some reason, like that whole genre, at the time, like I just kind of, it seemed invisible to me. At that time. So I haven't even heard of Johnny Lang. So I'm going to have to go investigate.
Yeah. And what I like seeing now, are you familiar with Joe Bonamassa at all?
Yeah, I know who he is. Yeah.
So
I've seen a few YouTube videos.
Yeah. He's kind of brought back the whole blues jazz shredder thing that I had kind of aspired to, but that had passed us by the mid 90s. That guy's absolutely crushing it. He's completely amazing. He was this guy who was a childhood virtuoso prodigy. I think there's even a 60 Minutes about him when he was a little kid, just about his incredible ability. He was going into bars when he was like 10 or 11 and just absolutely crushing it, with professional full-time bluesmen backing him. So that's the kind of stuff I like. I've always liked Steve Vai. He can get a little experimental and all that, but I think he's the greatest technical guitar player who's ever lived, and I don't think there's anyone even close. I loved Eric Johnson. I think he's spectacular.
Right.
But as I got older and kind of got out of the day-to-day guitar thing, it's not that I didn't enjoy the shredding. My tastes, I don't know if they matured or changed or whatever, and I fell in love with bluegrass, which in many ways it's similar because the musicians in bluegrass are spectacular, but I loved the simplicity of it. It was almost like a 180-degree change from the stuff I had previously liked. And you know, 20 years later, I feel like I can finally listen to and enjoy music without dissecting it in my head, which is a nice, liberating thing to finally be able to do.
Right. Yeah. I feel like when one of the things that you say, you know, your taste matured, I think one of the kind of characteristics of that process is getting into a music that has a canon, you know, and you know, I mean, you could say the blues too, because essentially it's a simple musical form, but like, you know, bluegrass or jazz or something like that, there's a kind of body of work that everyone knows, you know, there are many tunes that everyone knows how to play. I mean, it's a folk tradition.
Right, and there's a common thread through all of it, and there's something about, I would say, gospel, blues, and bluegrass, because they're all connected, that captures just something about the American experience and the American spirit that nothing else does. And that's why I love it. There's raw emotion in it. There's sadness. There's joy. There are timeless truths in all of them. I look at those three, throw in jazz as well, as, you know, the perfection of the American form of music. There's nothing else on earth like it.
Yeah, I mean, I strongly agree with that. And you know what? It's only a thing that could have developed in a confident civilization, if that makes sense. And, you know, you hear a lot about how, you know, I mean, music is the outlet of the downtrodden and things like that. And like, there's a lot of truth to that too, you know, on one hand, but on the other hand, just the idea of creating new forms is something that is, I think it's kind of closely tied into civilizational confidence in some way. You know, even if you're a marginal player on, like, if, you know, you're in a marginal community in the larger society, there's still something. That act of doing something new and creating something new out of nothing or out of, you know, disparate parts is, you know, it's like, it's a profound thing.
It is, and if you look at the improvisational aspect of especially blues and jazz, where you're trying to play it differently every single time you play it, and in fact, if you play it the same way twice, it's considered a failure.
Sure.
There's something to me that's so American about that you can take it just with blues, 12-hour blues, the same three chords, and you can play something entirely different over the exact same song 5 minutes apart. What other culture on earth could have created something like that but America?
Yeah, and that prioritizes that kind of individual, you know, spirit, and, you know, and I mean, as you know, it's creating, you know, you have the time element is so important. You know, you can do what you know, it's not like you've got 3 hours or 3 years to create your improvisation within those three chords. You've got to do it now.
Yeah, exactly. You have to do it right now.
You know,
you have to fit the mood of the moment. It has to fit the room. There's so much that goes into it. And I remember having a conversation with someone at my church when I was in high school and playing a lot. And he said he didn't like Stevie Ray Vaughan because he could never play the song the same way. And I was like, no, that's what makes him awesome. Yeah, that's the best part. You know, sure, there's licks that he goes back to and all that, but no, the fact that it's different every time they play it, that's what makes it fun.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, exactly. There was a guy named Dean Benedetti who used to follow Charlie Parker around for you know, a period of several years, and he had, you know, this is in like 1948, 49, around then. And it was hard to, you didn't just show up with your phone or anything to record in a random club. You showed up with a lot of big, a giant, tape deck to record the stuff. And he only had enough tape. He didn't want to waste his tape on the whole performance. So when Bird would take a solo, he'd press record, and when he was done, he'd press stop. And, so this box set, it's like, I don't know, this 15, 20 CDs worth of material ended up coming out in the 90s. And it's really fascinating because, the interest level was so high because, yes, he was going to play something different every time. And it's almost like, it's almost like people were this guy and subsequent listeners who were interested were trying to find, any random improv. It's like whatever, Boston, 1949 in April. He played one chorus of one chorus of ornithology, and it's like people want to hear it because it's spontaneous invention and it will never happen again.
Yep. Yeah, and that was just something that was always so exciting about it. When we would do studio work, I always had it was kind of tough for me because the thing that I loved about playing the blues was just the raw energy with it and the emotion that's attached to it, especially when you're playing it live. And it's so hard to recreate in a studio. I feel like people don't appreciate enough the ability of some of these guys and these producers and these talents to go in to a studio. I think of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, that album.
Yeah.
The way they were able to capture that Beatles energy in the studio just blows my mind to this day. That energy was always what I enjoyed about playing blues and playing live because there's nothing like it. I remember talking to my guitar teacher when I think I must have been a early junior in high school. We had a school talent show. My friends and I had a little band. We went and played Sweet Home Alabama, and we just rocked it, man. It was awesome. And I remember telling him, I think I had a lesson the next day, and I said, "Oh yeah, it's far and away the coolest thing I've ever done. There's nothing else like it on earth." And he said, "Oh yeah, you've caught the bug." That's how he described it. He's like, "You've caught the bug, and once you've caught it, you'll never find anything that scratches the itch quite like that."
Yeah.
To me, that's what makes music so awesome.
No, it's true. So so you've been working in politics for what? For how long? For at least 20 years, right?
20 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And is there something in politics that sort of comes close? Like what is the closest experience that you've had to that? Is it?
Oh, that's a great question. No, I would say probably I worked for Tom Coburn for several years in the Senate when he was kind of at his peak of just doing all kinds of shenanigans and causing all kinds of trouble, where we would go to the Senate floor and get ready to hatch something where I feel like that kind of energy on the floor, knowing you were up to something mischievous that no one else had figured out yet, that came pretty close. Because I feel like a lot of our shenanigans, at least in our circles, were pretty legendary. But just the buzz and the energy of being on the Senate floor doing something like that was pretty cool. But politics for me, it's a totally different thing. It's a mission. I feel like we're trying to save the country. We're trying to make sure that our kids and grandkids have a similar or even better upbringing that we had with at least the same, but hopefully more opportunities than we ever had. The same thing that our parents and grandparents hoped for us. So it's just a very different motivation behind doing this kind of work. Yeah.
I don't know. I see it as very much the same in crucial aspects. I mean, of course, I agree with you about the mission. There's a big difference between, kind of the prior mission, which was sort of, figuring out and deepening or advancing your own personal, let's say, aesthetic vision. within, different contexts in music. And then sort of going over and saying, okay, we need to save the country now. I mean, it's a huge difference in, let's say the way you move the lens, zooming out. But I don't know. I mean, I've always thought of it as really similar, the life of a jazz musician and the life of a, whatever it is that I do. Because both things contain a lot of improvisation, which is something that I think about, because in what we do, really, no 2 days are exactly the same. And
that's true. We were talking to staff the other day, just kind of about the art of opinion writing and having a take and all that, and we were talking about the need, especially among younger staff, to kind of learn their particular voice, because everyone has a different one. But I hadn't made that connection between that aspect and kind of the music improvisational aspect until you brought it up now. That's a really good point.
Yeah, and you know what? You always find this is not a solitary pursuit either. You always find yourself in the mix with different personalities, and creating coalitions between maybe some personalities that where it's not entirely harmonious. And look, when you're playing music, when you're in a band or you're playing with different people, it's always a kind of psychodrama in one way or another. Even if you all get along, or even if you're all trying to advance, either the politics or the music at the same time. It's always a really delicate dance. The balance of egos and whatever. In my day, you had that plus like substance abuse and drug issues going on, which I guess is kind of still present. But it's something that is it's like another skill set that you bring, and having that experience playing music, I think, helps negotiate some of that terrain.
That's a good point. So I got a question for you.
Yeah.
If you're
Sure.
stranded on a desert island,
okay,
you only get to have one album for the entire time you're there. What's the album you pick?
Oh shit! I've thought about this before, and I'm going to cheat. I'm going to cheat by saying the Nat King Cole Complete Capitol Recording box, which is 18 LPs, and I think it's the most.
Oh, that's
beautiful.
totally cheating.
Yeah.
That's
totally cheating.
That's like asking the genie for all the wishes. Yeah, my wish is to have all the wishes.
Yeah, no, but I'm thinking of like, whatever. It's a one. It comes in a big box, but it's the one thing. That's totally cheating. The next step after that, oh God, I don't know, it's really too difficult because I've always been allergic to ranking things, and I've always been allergic to. There's some people who love ranking things, but I can't. I go crazy with the possibility. What about you? What do you think?
Well, it's kind of a mood thing. Like what mood are you in at any given moment kind of defines, at least for me, what I want to be listening to. If you made me pick, I'd probably pick Clapton's From the Cradle, where he did all the old blues standards. He recorded it live. I think that album is absolutely perfect. Every time I listen to it, I hear something new. But I don't know, if you got me like in a different mood, I might pick Stevie Ray Vaughan's Carnegie Hall double CD. That one's also just an absolutely spectacular album.
That's not cheating as much as I cheated, but no, but that's
still kind of cheating.
That's totally good. Look, I remember when From the Cradle came out, and I bought it like the day it came out, and because everyone was, after, as you said, he went through this period where he was just making pop records, and I think, I don't know, I enjoyed the pop records, certainly not as much as the 70s stuff. But when he did that, it was great. It was like a return to form, and it was great.
Yeah, when was that? Was that like 95 or 96? I could be way off.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it was certainly in the 90s, and it was. I mean, I don't even know who was on that.
Well, so he had his guitar player Andy Fairweather Lowe.
Right.
Had been his guitar player for a while. I think he used to be a hee-haw guy.
Huh. That's crazy.
I'm pretty sure I think he still had Nathan West or Nathan East, his bass player. I can see the guy's face, but I'm looking
at it now. No, it's actually it's interesting. So he's got Andy Fairweather Lowe on guitar, and he's got Dave Bronze on bass, and Jim Keltner on drums. Interesting. That's great.
Who did he have on piano?
I'm gonna have to listen to this record. Chris Stainton.
Okay.
Who was a guy?
The piano on that album is fantastic.
I don't know. Yeah, and but it was 94. That record came out in 94.
Okay.
And it was the immediate follow-up to Unplugged, which, you know what? Like,
also fantastic album.
You gotta kind of love the guy for that, because I don't know if he knew he was going to have such a monster hit with Unplugged and the Tears in Heaven version from that record. And really, I mean, that record was played everywhere by everybody at that time. I mean, I think everyone had it. And to follow up that record, with a straight blues record, it's just really cool, because he knew that the interest would be high. So he's just like, you know what? I want to make sure that whoever my new fans are understand that this is my music. And I always thought
I think you're right about Unplugged. I don't think anyone had a clue at the time that thing was going to be the monster that it was. I mean, it also has my single favorite Robert Johnson song ever, which is Malted Milk.
Oh yeah.
Just this little plaintive, kind of little walk down, that just Clapton and his guitar. I mean, it's almost exactly like the original Robert Johnson recording. Just kind of a plaintive, vocal over a really simple guitar. It's just amazing.
Yeah. No, I'm looking at the track listing now, and, Big Bill Broonzy, Son House, Ledbetter, Robert Johnson, Muddy Waters. I mean, it's just great. It's just great. And really at the time, who was doing this? And I give the guy so much credit. I give the guy so much credit for kind of exhuming this music from the past. And, someone of his stature saying, you know what, I want to present to you these compositions which are timeless. And you probably haven't heard them before. I mean, we hadn't heard them before, right? We were like essentially kids. We didn't know the history of the music, at the time. And it wasn't with this record that I went back and looked, but I later became a big Bill Broonzy fan. But this is kind of how you at least how you used to learn about music, right? You would be like, oh, who wrote this? And you would go and
exactly.
investigate
So I remember when I got, it was the album that Stevie Ray put out after he died, The Sky is Crying.
Uh-huh.
I remember getting that, and I was just blown away by it. And I went down the track list, and then I went out and bought all the albums of the people who wrote those songs. That's how you learned about stuff. Yep. There was no going on Spotify or Shazam or whatever. You had to go out and find the record or find the CD that had the original stuff on, which was not easy. I mean, I remember, I think it was T-Bone Walker who did The Sky is Crying. I had a heck of a time getting my hands on that, at the time. But it was awesome.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, no, that's and I think about this a lot. I was actually I kind of started writing a piece about this yesterday, and then I thought, man, it's going to be one of those too boomer, too angry kind of pieces where I just decry modern life. But it's very much true. It's like, now when you can literally go and you open up Tidal or Spotify or Apple Music or whatever it is, and you see, here's the writer of the piece, and you just click, and you've opened yourself up into that universe, and within within a half an hour, you can sort of do the investigation that used to take us months to do. Like, oh, I can't find this record at the store. I got to order it. And I mean, remember the days when you used to go to your local CD shop and order an album?
Well, think about even learning a song. So, like, there was no YouTube then.
Right.
The internet was crazy new. I don't ever recall tabs being available online. You actually had to sit down and listen, and any song you wanted to learn, you had to figure it out on your own by listening to it for hours on it. I mean, the first solo I ever learned was Clapton's solo from Crossroads that he did with Cream.
Oh, yeah.
The only way to learn that was just sit down and listen to it and just struggle through it and find each note, and, and having to do that with everyone you liked, every album you liked. Now, I mean, you just find the tabs. You go on you go on YouTube. There's 50 lessons on how to play something. It's I don't know. It may be faster, but I'm not sure it's better.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I find that to be the case, and I also find that, I mean, now with the thing, I mean, you may disagree, but there was just the whole thing with Spotify and Joe Rogan and Neil Young and Joni Mitchell and whoever else is going to be added to the pile. But I just see a lot of people jumping up and down and saying, oh, who's Joni Mitchell? Who's Neil Young? Never heard of them. Never heard of them. Do they have any hits that do they have any hits that I know as like a 25-year-old? And sort of using that metric to decipher whether or not they're any good. And like, I don't know, I see that and I kind of get pretty furious about that, because I'm like, look, we live in an age where this shit is where more good shit is available to you than at any other time at the press of a button. And at the same time, you are not looking. You are not discovering new stuff. You're not putting any effort in when like so little effort is required to
Well, it's no different than there's no difference with books. We have the entire encyclopedia of the world's information at our fingertips, and we're actually reading less and less of anything that matters. So it's the same thing you see in music that you see in literature or history. People don't read the classics anymore. They go on social media. That's what they read. Like the proliferation of junk food doesn't mean people are eating healthy, and it's the same thing in music as it is in diets, as it is in literature and history. Right,
and I see the same thing with films too. You can get someone to binge watch 14 one-hour episodes of something before you can get them to sit down and watch a 2-hour movie. And look, I mean, in some ways too. I mean, I sometimes I would rather binge watch something than devote the time to whatever, a 90-minute film or something like that. I mean, I kind of get it. It's an attention span thing. But also, I was watching Ozark. Have you seen Ozark?
I have not. I watch precious little television. Basically, it's limited to live sports, predominantly live college sports. Okay. I haven't seen much of any of the what they call prestige television now, I guess.
TV. Yeah, I mean, so they're good, but I think, I mean, I'm watching Ozark and it's a very well told story. But it's I think of the 50s and the 60s and I would think like, yeah, this would be a total B movie in the 50s or 60s. There's nothing really going on. The arc of the characters is like, the character arcs aren't that interesting. It's like, he goes, he's good one day and then he goes bad, or he's bad and then he goes, and then he becomes a good guy. They're excellently told in the technical sense of like suspense and action and thriller. Like that stuff is great. But you don't walk away from it thinking like, I've seen a great piece of art. And
now, would you say that about like Breaking Bad? Now that's one I did watch because it was filmed in Albuquerque where I grew up. So I watched it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I loved
the Albuquerque stuff is the story.
Right. No, I love that show, but looking back on it, yeah, I mean, it probably fits into the same bag, which is that it's you know, a really well-made thriller as opposed to, I don't know. I mean, not to be kind of cheesy about it, but like, for example, Casablanca is about very real things, you know, and let's say the internal lives of the characters are just as important as kind of what's going on in the plot. And of course the plot is driving the characters to think about things in different ways, etc. And I mean, you could say the same thing happens in Breaking Bad too, but it's like, I don't know, maybe it's just not at that level. I don't know. I don't know if I'm kind of falling for whatever classic syndrome or something, where I see that, you know, the great works as kind of inherently better than the modern stuff. I think there's maybe a little bit to that. But on the other hand, it's like, I mean, is it enjoyable? Yes. Does it hook you immediately and really involve you in the drama? Yes. But I don't know. I just think there's a lot of focus on plot twists and suspense, and you know, a lot less on the kind of grand narrative sweep that there used to be. What do you think?
Yeah, and I feel like it's an even bigger problem in movies. So we used to love to go to the movies. We, you know, 10 years ago,
Sure.
went all the time. I honestly don't remember the last time I went, and it has nothing to do with COVID or with theaters having been shut down for a year. There's just nothing that comes out that I'm like, yeah, I want to have to get a babysitter and spend, you know, 2 or 3 hours at that. Like, it just, nothing seems worth seeing anymore. It's all trite comic book stuff, superhero stuff, horror movies. There doesn't seem to be anything that, and I could be falling into the same trap that you talk about classics where, you know, I just want it the way it was back in my day. Sounded all boomer. But I don't know. I just feel like that there's got to be a connection with the total leftist takeover of culture and the total dearth of actual good art and movies anymore. It's all pat. It's all retreads. It's all ideological, and none of it's good.
Yeah. No. I mean, I agree with that. The last time I went to the theater and I said I want to go see this was the Tarantino movie about Los Angeles, the one with, I think, with Brad Pitt in it.
That Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, is that the one?
Yeah. And it's another one of those. It's exactly the same. But then again, I've always thought this of Tarantino, which is that, you know, he makes films that are exciting to watch, but leave you thinking about nothing at the end of the day. You know, they leave you with scenes that are cool and you know, technically well made, but at the end of the day, it's hollow in a way that, you know, in a way that there used to be films that were similarly hollow in the old days, but they were B movies. Mm-hmm. You know, nobody ever thought of them as like, oh, okay, you know, this is an Oscar-worthy picture or something. You know, this is like, oh, it's a cool diversion. It's like, you know, the one I always think about is oh my gosh, now I'm forgetting the name. There's like a 60-minute film noir that is basically about you know, a guy who takes a bunch of people hostage at his house, or at their house, and it's unbelievably, you know, taut and you know, fun to watch. And oh my God, I'm forgetting the name, and even the main actor. But I'll put it in the description once I remember. But it's like there's nothing to this film other than entertainment, and people kind of understood that, and like they loved it, and they went to see it. But you know, you're not going to say, you know, it reminds me of how in the early 90s, MTV used to call the people who would appear on it as artists, and I always kind of bristled. I was like, wait, so you're referring to, you're referring to whatever this person that made it an utterly forgettable single as an artist. Is that, I mean, I don't know what else you call them, but like, the bar has been considerably lowered, let's just say, from the age
Right.
of, from the age of, kind of people who are genuine artists feel like, whatever, is Nicki Minaj an artist? Is, what's her name? The WAP.
Yeah, Cardi B. Is that who that
Cardi
is?
B. Right. Like, is Cardi B an artist? I don't even think Cardi B in her most, I don't even think Cardi B thinks of herself as an artist. Maybe she does because she's been told by the people around her that she's a great artist. But like, does she understand the artistic process? I don't know. Probably not. So it's,
I watched one of the Beatles documentaries. I think it was the one with just Paul McCartney.
Uh-huh.
I think it might have been on Hulu, and it was like a...
Oh, I saw that too. That was Rick Rubin.
Yeah. And it was like a 7 or 8 part thing. And he just kind of went through the history of the Beatles and had Paul talk about, how'd you come up with this melody? What led you to go this direction, that direction? And as I was watching it, I was totally fascinated just to see like one of the greatest true artists of all time to talk about what was going through his head. And I thought, you know what? Of all the stuff that I hear on the radio anymore, of all the stuff that's popular, do the people who record them, did they have anything to do with the writing? And I don't know why it dawned on me at that moment, because it's been like this for a while, that none of the recording artists now really have anything to do with their own music other than showing up in the studio or going to a concert and performing it. And I feel like we've lost something when we've lost like the bands that all write things together, the singers who write their own melodies. I don't know, it just kind of makes me sad.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. I mean, my friend Rick Beato talks about this a lot, and it's like you can see what's going on. You can see the story of how that kind of happened or is happening now just in the writing credits. You see like 9 people credited to one utterly forgettable, pop single. And you think like, how did this happen? What did each person bring? I mean, did each person bring a little bit of lyric or like the beat or, I don't know. I can't, it's hard for me to imagine what, 7 or 9 people on a 2.5 or 3 minute single, can contribute, unless it's totally improvised.
Can you imagine even having to write something with 7 people in the room? It sounds absolutely miserable.
Right. Well, it makes me think, it reminds me of the really old days back in the 20s, like, this was a thing with Ellington, which was a lot of his tunes were credited to Ellington and Irving Mills. And of course, they were all Ellington's tunes, but Irving Mills was the publisher, and he put himself on the, he just kind of affixed himself on the publishing credit. At least for whatever the first 15 or 20 years of Ellington's career. So like it reminds me of that. I mean, could it be that? Like it's just like, okay, here's the executive producer, like in a movie, and you just sort of
it's a way to grab part of the rev share, an extra rev share for each Spotify play if you have a credit on there. Whereas you go back and you listen to stuff. We went to a Glenn Campbell kind of tribute at the Ryman.
Oh wow!
Maybe
a couple years
ago.
Was such a great
his
guitar
kids
player.
were there. Oh, he was fantastic. He got his start in Albuquerque, New Mexico, by the way. With I can't remember the guy's name. It was like Bill something or other and the Sandia Mountain Boys, and I think Glenn Campbell was that guy's nephew, which is how he got his start playing music on television.
Wow!
But they had this tribute at the Ryman, and his kids there, his daughter there, just performed a spectacular song that she had written as Campbell was kind of declining from Alzheimer's. But the people who were up there were constantly talking about Jimmy Webb, who's one of the big songwriters for Glenn Campbell. I think it was Jimmy Webb who wrote The Highwaymen. Highwayman. Yeah, he did Wichita Lineman.
Yeah, he did. He was one of those guys like late '60s and early '70s. He was the guy. He was like yeah.
But like, can you name the guy in any of the major genres right now that has that kind of influence, that has that kind of connection with the talent? I just feel like that it's totally missing. It's been so commodified now that like we talked at the beginning, what I always loved about blues and jazz was the authentic raw emotion in it. And it just feels like everything now with how easy it is to produce stuff, how digital everything is, you know, the proliferation of effects, all that kind of stuff, everything just feels so manufactured and fake.
Yes. No, I mean, I agree with that. Though there's still great music being produced. This is why it's like, it's kind of heartbreaking because, you know, with that dynamic that existed before, you know, which is that so much is available, but people aren't curious to seek it out, even though it's very easy to do so. You know, there's great music coming out today, but nobody hears it. You know, and you know, because in order to hear it, you've really got to look. You know, someone, a Twitter friend, we're talking about this, and I think she said, like, you know, when she was younger, you know, back in the '80s, the pop charts was so full of quality songs, you know, production and melodies, and you know, it was probably the last era where you could have a really catchy, well-crafted song in whatever the top 10, top 20. And so she was saying, like, back in those days, like, the top 40 was so good that she didn't even want, like she didn't have the desire to go look and to go search, you know, other stuff out. And I think there is something to that. There's something to that. But now, where some of the stuff is, you know, what passes every so often, I'll go and see what's on the Spotify, you know, the top Spotify, and like, you know, Rick Beata does this too. Like, he'll go and see what's hot, and a lot of the time it's just absolute dreck. It's absolute dreck, and you think like, the only people who could possibly be getting something from listening to this are people with no frame of reference. You know, they have no, you know, they have no experience listening to quality music, and it's just like, it's you know, it's like, whatever. It's not even bubblegum, you know. Bubblegum was, you know, they used to say, you know, pop music was bubblegum in the sense that it was easily digestible and fun and all this stuff. But like, I mean, I wish it was bubblegum, right? Because
I gotta say, I love Rick Beato's YouTube channel. He is so good. He respects, and you can tell he truly enjoys and appreciates all the different songs he's breaking down and the artists he's talking about. It's his enthusiasm for the music is almost contagious. So to anyone who hasn't followed him or seen his stuff on YouTube, I know you two are friends. I don't know him. I enjoy his videos, but I can't recommend his channel enough. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, it's so great, and it's and you can tell that he's having the time of his life. You know, as he gets to, you know, sit and talk about music, and then of course to talk to some of his heroes in interviews and things like that. I mean, it's just a joy. Like, everyone in the world should be so sort of fulfilled with you know, with what they do. I mean, it's kind of an incredible blessing, and I see people like that who are you know, whether it's in music or politics or whatever, you know, you've got to love what you do. You've really got to love what you do, and you've really got to feel like if you were to do something else, it just wouldn't be as good. I don't know. I can't do anything that I don't feel passionate about. Maybe it's because I am spoiled, you know, just in terms of being passionate about a bunch of different things. But I can't imagine myself as sort of one of those people who just, you know, hates what they do for a living all their lives. And, I don't know, to me it sounds horrible. And especially now with the ability, you've got the ability to make a living in so many different ways, creatively online, or at least, you know, remotely or whatever. There's almost no excuse.
So I'm going to have to bounce here, but what I'll leave you with,
Okay.
since we were talking about fine cinema, is a scene from the movie Office Space, where they're talking about how much they hate their jobs, and they said, well, if you figure out what you really want to do, you should think, oh, if I had $1 bazillion, you know, what would I want to go do? That should be your job. And one of the characters said, no, that's stupid. That's the dumbest frame of reference ever. Because then who's going to empty the trash? Like, who's going to go build the roads? There's a balance between, you know, what needs to get done and what you want to get done, I would say.
Right. No, look, that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. 100%. Anyway, man, thank you for joining me. This has been great.
This was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Okay, man. Take care. Bye.
All right, buddy. See you later. Take care.